It's joining us now on the Comcast Business Hotline. Every day in business is a big day. Let Comcast Business help you move forward with what's next. This man does a tremendous job covering the NFL for ESPN, ESPN.com. You see him on TV. Does a great job, and we always appreciate him taking the time.
Good
coming
hair,
on with us.
too. Really
Our
good
man
hair.
Jeremy Fowler joins us. Jeremy, good morning, man. How you doing today?
Hey, good morning, guys. Thanks for having me.
What's up, buddy?
There's so much to get into, so I'll just start with the most recent of news with the Philadelphia Eagles. Zadarius Smith, out of nowhere, retires. We find out via social media yesterday, and I know it's been reported by some saying personal reasons. Do you have any insight on the retirement of Zadarius Smith? Because a lot of Eagles fans are also speculating maybe he's just trying to run away from a bad situation.
Yeah, I did check with somebody with the team who did confirm that it wasn't like a roster or lack of playing time issue. He just, he was not signed all off season, and then signs with the team, plays a few games, and kind of realized, hey, I'm 11 years in and I'm done. Now, perhaps there's more to it than that I don't know, but that's what I was told. And, he played 17 snaps the other night, I believe. So, was that a factor at all? It's hard to tell for sure, but it's certainly possible. And, the Eagles have kind of had a transitional period at that position. They brought in Azeez Ojulari, too. They gave him, a couple $1 million, I believe, or at least a decent one-year deal back in March. And then, they weren't overly impressed in camp, so they didn't play him. And then they realized, he can actually play, plus we have injuries, let's put him in. And so now he's playing more snaps than Zadarius was. So I think they're just trying to find a rhythm there at the position, and it's been a little bit of a struggle with Nolan Smith out.
Jeremy, I love hearing, I know how much you work the phones and talk to people. When people talk about the Philadelphia Eagles that aren't associated with the Philadelphia Eagles, what are they saying?
You mean like just people around the team, or people around the league?
Yeah, people around the league. Are they shocked? Are they surprised? Are they not surprised? Like what's been the perception?
It's funny. Look, I'll start with Jalen Hurts just because I think that's kind of where my conversation was this summer, because I do top 10 rankings of players,
yep.
But I do it through execs, coaches, and scouts, and part of the reason why I do it is what's a good read, but also it just gives me a lot of knowledge about situations. And quarterbacks, I spent a lot of time on that. Jalen Hurts was our 9th quarterback, and a lot of people were outraged about that, including a lot of people in Philadelphia, because the Super Bowl winner outperformed Patrick Mahomes on the biggest stage. All that's great. But, you talk to coaches and execs and scouts around the league, and they don't look at him as that sort of top-tier passer. They just don't. And they say, look, they had to run the ball a gazillion times to sort of mask Jalen a little bit, honestly. He averaged, I think, 24 passing attempts a game last year. Year before, passed a lot, and it went poorly. Now he's passing more, it's going poorly. So that's not a knock on him. It's just he has limitations as a passer in the pocket, because if he can stop the run, you can play zone behind it, and he struggles with the zone. That's kind of the take I get from, especially from coaches that have either prepared for him or watch him. So I think that's the source of A.J. Brown's frustration. I don't think it's personal. Maybe it is, but for me, I think it's more the reality of the passing game, And so if you're Kevin Patullo, you're taking over, and the line's not as good, and so you're not getting as many yards per clip with Saquon, at least right now. Now, I'm sure they can tweak some things, maybe get some play action or some pre-snap motion. There are more things they can do. And, in fact, I think some people in the locker room want to see those things, especially the play action part. But outside of that, you have a quarterback who's limited, and you can't run the ball as well because the line's not as good as it was. So, what do you do at that point? At some point, that's not on the coaches. That's on the players to get it done.
But when it comes to the coaches, and look, we've talked about Jalen Hurts and some of his issues this season. When you talk about the players maybe in-house wanting to do certain things, I go back to the hiring process to begin with. It wasn't very much an extensive search. At least we don't think it was. So, Jeremy, when it came to promoting Kevin Patullo, was there much of a search at all? Or did we know that the second Kellen Moore got hired by the Saints that this was Patullo's job?
Well, I think there was a search because, look, you have to do a search now. You have to interview minority candidates and go through a very specific process as mandated by the NFL. Was it an exhaustive search? I don't know. That's to be debated. Maybe not. But I do know that Kevin had elicited a lot of trust in the building, not only with Nick Sirianni, but with a lot of the players. He's got a good relationship with those guys. It's my understanding that he was kind of for over the years, he's been a good sort of liaison between the players and Nick Sirianni. So because of that, he fit a lot of the job description. He's got a lot of background with several different offenses and coaches. So, it made sense. And typically head coaches do like, when they can, reward coaches that have worked their way up and want to see some upward mobility in their career. So they sort of pay it forward in that way. Because of all those things, certainly he was qualified on paper. And I mean, look, they're coming off a mini bye. I'm assuming that that Kevin and the offense will make some adjustments. You can't just roll it out and keep doing exactly what you're doing. So this is a good time for them to come off a Thursday night game off a loss.
What do you make of the A.J. Brown stories?
Well, partly what I had mentioned, I think this is a guy who's in a limited passing game with a limited quarterback from the pocket. And that's an issue for a guy who, from what I'm told, very clearly behind the scenes, wants to be wants to be a Hall of Famer, wants to be a catalyst for winning. And sometimes he's a catalyst for winning by being, I guess you could say, a decoy or, drawing coverage that helps them run the ball or helps the ball go somewhere else. That's hard for a lot of receivers, that we've seen that over the years, and I think Brown's no different. So that's really my take on it. I would say it's been what's happening this year with the cryptic tweet. That to me is not new. It's sort of been the worst kept secret even during last year, that Brown can be frustrated at times with the offense that he's in and with the limitations of the quarterback.
Now,
so
how
I can't
close
speak
are we
for him, but that's been out there for a while.
How close do you believe could we be to a boiling point with A.J. Brown, right? Cryptic tweet is one thing, but then all of a sudden acting out on a sideline or something, even though we all agree with A.J.
Yeah,
we all
we're
agree.
in agreement.
I need to make that clear for anybody listening. We agree that the offense needs to get better, but are we reaching a potential boiling point with A.J. Brown here?
I mean, boy, if it depends on how you define boiling point. Are they going to trade him? No, I don't expect that. Now, I have talked to some teams that wonder if in the offseason they would do that, just to give everybody a fresh start. Is a boiling point more frustrations or something happening on the sideline that we all see? I don't know. I will say this. When I was in the locker room the other night, I was at the game Thursday, and I've reported this, but I did talk to a player who says it does feel like 2023 right now a little bit, the end of 23. We've got to change that. We've got to redirect this thing to avoid that. So, that was a pretty strong message that I was told, and so they got to sort of figure that out, and Brown is the center of that. I was told that leading into the Denver game Sunday and then leading into the Thursday night game that Brown and Hurts were good, and that they were, and it felt like, at least in the building, they were in a good spot. So I don't sense a lot of major issues from an animosity standpoint or personality standpoint, but, I'm open to being wrong on that.
That is an interesting one. We'll be watching. We're going to be watching that
absolutely.
one. Is the right now in the NFC, do you think there's reasons for Eagles fans to be concerned when you look at the landscape, considering they already hold the tiebreaker over the Rams, they already hold the tiebreaker over the Buccaneers, they've won there. How concerned do you think Eagles fans should be with the early struggles?
It's a mild concern. The fact that they're only 6 games in, there's a lot of time to redirect this thing. It's a long season. Things happen. Teams that we thought would be good or not. I mean, Baltimore was my Super Bowl pick. They're 1-5.
Right.
And I still think they could maybe get a backdoor playoff run somehow when Lamar comes back. So it's so early. The NFC is wide open, I feel like. I don't think anybody's run away with it yet. There are a lot of good quality teams, but is there a team that's a cut above the rest? I don't know. Now, Tampa is really dangerous, and you've seen them, even though the Eagles beat them a couple weeks ago. They've had the Eagles number in the past. They're 5-1 with a ton of injuries. It's really impressive what head coach Todd Bowles, quarterback Baker Mayfield, what they're doing. So, you could certainly argue they're the best in the NFC right now. But to me, it's a pretty wide open conference, and I still like where Philly can fit in the equation if they can make some adjustments. Now, I will say, Howie Roseman, we know, is one of the most aggressive GMs He's made a couple kind of smaller trades over the last month or two. It would not shock me if they make some moves here. Just knowing their nature and the fact that they desperately need cornerback help, as you could see when Quinyon Mitchell went out the other night. Looks like they need a pass rusher too right now, depending on what happens with injuries. So, defensively, will that be a focus for Howie in the next couple of weeks as he makes his calls to teams?
So you led me right into my next question, Jeremy. Jeremy Fowler, ESPN, here with us. How aggressive will Howie be? Because, look, we know he's going to make a move. It's a lock, right? Howie Roseman will trade for another team's janitor if he likes the job that they do in the clubhouse. Like, we know that how Howie Roseman operates. But there is a question about cap space, future paydays for guys like Jalen Carter. How aggressive can Howie actually be? And do you expect him to be aggressive? Because there are two glaring weaknesses on the defense, cornerback two, as you mentioned, and edge rusher.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you bring that up because I actually think the Eagles have shown some restraint this offseason, which we've seen great teams do at times. I think the Golden State Warriors have done it at times where you can't just always run it back with everybody. You got to make some tough decisions knowing that your key players you want to pay and retain. And you mentioned Jalen Carter. Jordan Davis I'd probably put in that boat. There'll be some others. And the Eagles are aggressive in paying guys early, and I think that does largely pay off. But, you see that restraint, which looks good on paper, but then now they're struggling at several positions, including guard. I mean, Mekhi Becton was there to be paid and it wasn't massive money. He was a great fit for what they did. Now he's gone, and I feel like that's been an issue there at the guard spot. Plus, Landon Dickerson's hurt. So, there are now moves to be made, and the restraint that you showed largely paid off, but now you have some warts. And so I look at cornerback, and just the fact that you had Isaiah Rodgers, didn't pay him. Now there's that void there. Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell are just they're great players, but not quite enough. You just need one more piece there. I think of still some free agents out there. Asante Samuel Jr. is getting healthy, and he could be an option. I know he's been in touch with Philadelphia. It's maybe a third corner if you don't want to make a trade. There's some guys out there, the Jets, Michael Carter Jr., Roger McCreary in Tennessee. There's some veteran players that are either not in the long-term plans of the franchise, or, a Tariq Woolen in Seattle would be a great fit. He could play some press man for you, long, fast. There's some options out there, guys that will be available if they want to make a move a corner.
I'll just ask it because I know people are going to want to hear it yes or no. Trey Hendrickson, on the table or off the table for the Eagles?
I'll put him on just as far as a call.
Sure.
I was told I'll take it off because I was told Cincinnati's not trading him. Now, if they're 2-6 in 2 weeks, do we talk, or does Cincinnati intensify talks? Maybe. But I was told pretty firmly they have no plans to trade him. So I'll take it off for that reason. I do expect that the Eagles will make that call because I do think they, with each key
due
player.
diligence.
Yeah, right. Especially a guy like that, I think they'll check in on.
Jeremy, listen, man, we appreciate it. That was great conversation.
Thanks,
as always, we always appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you again down the road. Keep up the great work at ESPN.
Hey, anytime, guys.
Thank you,
Have a great
buddy.
day.
There he is, Jeremy Fowler on the Comcast Business Hotline.
That was some interesting stuff.
So I'm throwing out the show sheet for the last segment because
that was some
whatever
interesting
was
stuff.
planned goes out the window.
Thank you so much for checking out our content here on our YouTube channel. You can like and subscribe, and that way you're never going to miss anything that we've got going on right here at 97.5 The Fanatic.